Happy New Year, everybody. It's Guubums. I know I haven't made a video in quite a while, but yeah, I'm back with another video. Well, pretty much I took a long break from TFT, or like where I kind of played but didn't play too much, and then I didn't really know what's going on, but I recently had to come back because I want to make a top cut for a tournament. You have to make top 32. I'm pretty safely in there now after climbing about 1,000 OP from 200 OP Masters all the way up to, as you can see, rank 15 in North America. So I'm pretty much making a video today to hopefully show you guys how I did that, and maybe you guys can replicate some of the same success. A lot about this video will be about like comps that you play on the patch. I know obviously there's going to be other content creators that show you how to play these comps, but some of them are outdated, and as well as there's like some certain ways to play certain comps and certain ways to kind of just like play TFT in the current patch was less explored, I think. I guess like in previous content or in previous iterations of TFT or in previous patches. So just like talking about how to play this patch, hopefully you guys can replicate some of the success. So very first comp I have on my list that I use to climb like vast majority of my LP is this Ahri comp. It's by far the strongest comp in the game, and I'm pretty sure, I mean, everybody needs to be playing this, and it's relatively easy to play. All you have to do is you have to find blue buff, Nashers, and Gunblade on Ahri. Now the problem with this comp is if you slam Gunblade and Nashers, the only comp you can really play is either Ahri or Twisted Fate. Twisted Fate is a comp I'd shy away from unless you have to play it. It tends to be like a comp that you can top 4 with often, but it's like difficult to win unless you're like really high rolling. Whereas like this comp, even if you're low rolling, most of the time you can end up in it 6th. So the items for this comp are pretty basic. Pretty much just these two are your main items. You're playing 6 Sentinel and Ahri. The chosen that you want is either chosen Blitzcrank or Ahri, but any Sentinel chosen will be acceptable so long as you are getting the Sentinel tag. And then if you get the Sentinel tag, you drop Garen for any unit of your choosing. The best two being Sona and Kiana and Alawi. You know, not surprising. These are the legendaries. Obviously, comps are going to be a lot stronger with them in. I put these items on Seraphine. Honestly, all 3 of these are completely useless on her. But at any point, if you get Sona, you want to transfer any Seraphine items onto Sona. Sona's better immediately. I know you will lose KDA unless you have KDA chosen Ahri, but yeah, it's just going to be worth it anyway. So go ahead and do that. I've seen a lot of people like not take out Seraphine for Sona just because they want to keep KDA. For the most part, honestly, KDA, the hexes, especially if they're bad, will grief your positioning. And that's something that like a lot of lesser experienced players will not be able to like kind of look past. So as soon as you hit Sona, just sell your Seraphine and move items. When you get to level 9, you can want to play 5 Spellweaver. You want to play legendaries, you know, as they make sense. So if say you have Spellweaver chosen Sona, you could just play this exact board, obviously without these two, on your level 9, and you'll be fine. Otherwise, once again, if you have Sentinel chosen, you can just play another legendary and you're also fine. So you'll notice that like I put these items on Blitzcrank. Pretty much what you really want with this comp is your Ahri items need to be set, and then after that you want anti-heal in the form of like Sunfire, Morello, or Red Buff. Morello or Red Buff go on Seraphine, and then you want anti-MR either in the form of Shiv or in the form of Spark. I've noticed a lot of people put Spark on their Echo because they think they can greed for 3 item against like 3 tank best in slot Blitzcrank. Honestly, Spark is just best in slot on Blitzcrank. You should just put your Spark on Blitzcrank. I'm pretty sure that's a big mistake not to. Otherwise, the items are pretty flexible. This item, Steadfast Heart, is really good just because it makes out of chain glove, which as you'll notice do not make into any of Ahri items, whereas a lot of these other items will. So Spark obviously takes up your rod for Gunblade, but you know, Spark is still really good because it kills your cloak. You won't need cloak pretty much anywhere else in this comp, so Spark is really good. But this item, Steadfast Heart, is insane just because it's best in slot Blitzcrank as it is, just as an item, but also for your enemy economy it's really strong. Redemption is also probably the single strongest tank item in the comp, but as you notice it takes up a tier and a belt, so it's really difficult to kind of find that when you're looking for blue buff and you're looking for Nashers, which obviously take priority in this comp. So this is a comp that you should play the most. And then pretty much every other comp, with the exception of one that I'll talk about last, is going to be a reroll comp. And these are the comps that you should definitely be looking towards if you are, you know, are looking to get free LP. I think one of the most broken comps, actually probably the actual most broken comp, but is very specific, is this next comp, which is Twin Terror, Twitch, Vex, Executioner, Punk type deal. I think this is a relatively new comp, so especially if you haven't been following up to date with like the latest streams, some of the latest videos, or I don't know what people are really putting out, but if you haven't been catching streams, you haven't been watching high elo gameplay, you might not know about this comp. It is the single most broken comp in the game. You can only play it if you hit the Twin Terror augment. If you get that augment on 2-1, you should hard force this comp, call Twitch in chat, /deafen, whatever you want to do. You just hard force this comp. Your items literally don't matter. At some point you will hit your items, you know, so it doesn't really matter that much, and you play this comp. Pretty much the chosen you want to hit is obviously Twitch, but if you don't get the trait that you want, which will be Executioner ideally, then you know the other one's also fine. I've seen people sell Punk Twitch to roll for Executioner or Twitch. I don't think it's worth it most of the time. Obviously in some cases it will be worth it. I think as you level up with this comp, you know, you do want to fit in for Executioner. Fitting in a second Amumu at 8 isn't really worth it, but fitting, you know, like say a Severa, random Severa, doesn't really matter. You can honestly frontline it. Will, you know, give you 4 Executioner if you have that Executioner Twitch. Honestly, it doesn't matter that much, so I wouldn't think too much about it. This comp is super easy. It's just 80 crit items on Twitch, i.e. Giant Slayer, Tear, red buff blue, Last Whisper, Guard Breaker, it doesn't matter. Just fill your Twitch up with 80 crit items, pretty standard stuff. Don't try not to put like too much attack speed. Like something like a Rage Blade is pretty bad just because Rage Blade doesn't give any power to his ult, and whereas all of these other items will. Standard Pantheon tank items, I just put pretty much every item that you can use in the comp. Obviously you don't need any of these items specifically. I notice people will neglect their Vex. Vex is like very, very strong in this comp. Like it's pretty much as much of a Vex comp as it is a Twitch comp. Twitch will be your primary damage, whereas Vex will still do, you know, 80% of Twitch's damage while still CCing the target. That being said, this is a comp you roll on 6-4, so obviously you're going to be 3-starring Twitch a lot sooner than you'll be 3-starring Vex, so that's why you itemize Twitch first. Pantheon gets any generic tank items. I think the best tank items on Pantheon are actually Protector's Vow and Redemption, just because they have a tier on them, and getting that first cast on Pantheon 0 out of 60 mana is really, really important just because he reduces so much damage when he ults that it's really important. However, tiers are a really valuable component in this comp just because, you know, all of Vex's best in slot with the exception of really Nashers is going to require a tier. You generally want at least 1 mana item on her if possible, otherwise just like throw away random rods. As you notice, none of these units use rod. Vex is a really good outlet for using your rods, so this comp once again is really good for item economy, but primarily you will be looking for those 80 crit items to put on your Twitch. Once again, this is pretty much just played with Twin Terror. Actually, it is only played with Twin Terror. You can sometimes find Twin Terror on 3-2 and then pivot into this comp. That is an option, but I think just large in a way that will be very, very rare, so I wouldn't think too much about it. Now that being said, if you happen to find that and you have the gold to be able to roll for this comp, you are really stable throughout the game just on like 2 stars or even sometimes 1 stars on stage 3 and then 2 stars on stage 4, and then obviously as you scale into the late game, once you hit your 3 stars, you'll be extremely strong with this comp. So this comp is pretty much a free top 2 or 3 every time you get to pick it, and the only problem is if someone contests you, you guys are both screwed. Oh, also there's gonna be a country reroll that people play that hold your Vex. That's a little bit annoying, but just because someone's playing country reroll doesn't mean I'd be unwilling to play this comp. Next up we have Yone Crowd Diver. So this comp is also super broken. As you'll notice with all these reroll comps is that they're all super niche in that you can't play them from every spot possible. Obviously your main carry, in this case Yone, will need really good items, because if you don't have these items, more or less you're screwed. Hodge is replaceable with BT. This comp is really straightforward. You just go 7, try to hit your Yone and play this exact board on 7. You want to put like Morello and red buff on your Viego just because he spreads it really, really well. GAZ, Zed's your second strongest carry, but if you upgrade Viego first, feel free to put any leftover AD items on Viego. You'll notice that this comp pretty much doesn't use rods with the exception of Morello. Crown Guard is the outlet for rods for most AD comps just because rod is a really weak component in the current meta. AD comps have no use for it pretty much right now, so you'll find Crown Guard and Morello are being built a lot in these comps. But once again, you wouldn't be playing this comp if you got dropped a lot of rods, and this is a comp that you just go to 7, you hit Yone Chosen. It doesn't matter which one. Ideally, the best one is Crowd Diver, so that if you get Crowd Diver here, obviously you can fit in Kiana on the following level at 8, and then 6 Crowd Diver is extremely, extremely strong. Obviously, if you get Crowd Diver stat off a tome or off the carousel later, it's something that you can really, really cap out with, but for the most part, this is a pretty standard board. Super strong. You generally want your Yone in front of the enemy carry, especially at 3-star. However, certain carries will be able to like obviously one-shot your Yone, so you have to be a little bit careful with that. Ahri is the most notable one, but also even Ezreal is not someone you really want to be face tanking, so in those cases, obviously you just put Yone 1 back, ideally on the same side. Yeah, this comp is pretty straightforward. So I'll talk about this a little bit further later on, but none of these are like that augment specific, but what you'll notice is I'll talk about augments because it's like how to play the patch type of video. Reroll comps actually use the same augments, so augment specificity is not something that you should be too concerned with, but yeah. Anyways, moving on, we have the exact same comp, but it's Riven. They use very similar items because you can actually just build BT and still play Yone. Riven uses QSS, however, instead of IE, which you'll notice is pretty different because Riven without QSS cannot play the game. Something that's really, really nice for Riven, as well as once again most of the other reroll comps, is like there's 2 silvers that give a mini QSS in Indomitable Will and Silver Veil. Both of those can semi-replace this QSS. Well, Indomitable Will can entirely replace the QSS. It's probably one of the best silvers you can get for this comp, but once again, you're just going to 7 and rolling for this board. You have an extra slot, to be honest, and it doesn't really matter what you play. If you have 8-bit chosen, you don't even need to play an extra 8-bit, and then you have 4 8-bit, and this is the board. You can play something random, honestly, like just literally anything works, anything upgraded, but most of the time people will play like an edgelord to prepare for the level 8, where they can play another edgelord. It could even just be Yasuo for 5 edgelord. 5 edgelord honestly is a really weak trait, so I wouldn't be thinking too much about it. Once again, if you have edgelord chosen, then obviously you don't have to play this. You can actually just play Corki for 4 8-bit. Ideally you get an 8-bit spat. It doesn't matter. Just put it on Viego. Yeah, so ideally you get an 8-bit spat for 4 8-bit, but in general that doesn't really matter either. Same idea as before. Viego just holds your anti-heal items in the form of red buff and Morello, just because he spreads it really well, and he's going to also be your secondary carry. You can also carry Caitlyn as soon as you get a 2-star. Once again, just AD items. Once again, you'll notice Rod is not very good in this comp because it's an AD comp, so there you go. Do not play this comp if you open with like 1 Rod and then get another Rod on Krugs. You should probably look for something else ideally. Next up, we have Jax. I'll talk about that last one in just a second. So we have Jax. This is a really simple comp. This is a level 6 comp, unlike the other two. So this is the comp that you want to be playing if you have a lot of rods, just because you could be building Spark, JG, Hodge, GA is best in slot Jax. If you have Azanias from either the opening portal in the form of Artifact Anvil, or you have like Portable Forge opener into Azanias, you should hard force Jax, type Jax in chat. Same thing with Twitch. For the most part, unless you're playing at like really lower elos, nobody will contest you as soon as they see Azanias, because they know that anyone with Azanias should just hard force Jax. At the very least, that's how it is at higher elos. I can't say with, you know, that much certainty how it is at lower elos, but hopefully people will respect it if you call Jax early enough and people won't contest you. So this comp, once again, super easy. You just play this exact board on 6. Obviously, you know, you don't play 2 Jaxes, but you're going to be missing like MF at the time, so this is your level 6 board ideally. That being said, most of the time you won't get Zac or Zed. If you get neither, most of the time people are going to be playing around 4 Mosher, just because it's a good standard mid game. But 4 Mosher is a relatively weak trait for the kind of like the overall comp, so eventually you'll want to replace these with Zac, Zed, and then MF. Especially in the lower elos, I've seen a lot of people play Mosher with this comp. It's generally pretty weak. I've done it as well. It's pretty weak. So you want to be rerolling Jax on 6. The thing with this comp is you really want the EDM chosen. So if you hit Mosher chosen Jax, you have to make sure you buy the Mosher chosen Jax and sell it. The only downside is if you already have 6 Jaxes and you get the Mosher chosen Jax, you are going to be in a lot of trouble. So you're just gonna have to pray that doesn't happen. There's not really a way around it, to be honest. You can't skip the Jax, because if you skip the Jax, you won't find another Jax pretty much in too much gold, so it's not worth it. At that point, you probably just have to buy, but that's a very rare scenario. But ideally, once again, you have to hit EDM chosen Jax, because without 5 EDM, this comp is relatively weak. You roll on 6 for Jax, hit Jax 3, and then you go to 7, and you're just pretty much rolling for Lux. Sometimes you can go for Set, but Set is often contested by people playing Heartsteel, people playing just random Set frontline, just because he's a pretty good unit. So be a little bit cautious about that. Otherwise, you're just stacking Zed and Zac afterwards. These two 2-starred are really strong. Generic tank items on Zac, generic tank items on Zed. The best item on Zed by far is GA. So other than that, like, once again, it doesn't matter. Just GS, IE, Deathblade, all this fun stuff, BT, all that fun stuff is really good. Something that a lot of people will ask about is like, why are you putting Lux on the 3rd row? You want to be putting Lux on the 3rd row if you're EDMing your Jax, just because the way EDM works is you jump to the highest HP unit, not percentage, flat HP unit within 2 hexes or 3 hexes or something like that. And pretty much if you have Lux on this row, it's just going to have better targeting when EDM procs, because you're EDMing Jax. Otherwise, Lux gets any generic AP. I just put these ones because they're all the utility ones. This is a really good comp for rods, because if you just put like Death Cap, Blue Buff, Archangels all on Lux, you know, you're going to be good to go, and Lux will act as a very strong secondary. Oftentimes in the late game, Lux will actually out damage Jax. Yeah, so your win con is really just going for Lux 3 on 7 and then pushing 8 for something completely random. Honestly, Poppy becomes really good. You can honestly just play 3 Mosher. You can drop Set. Sometimes for a Lowy is possible, but at that point, you're getting to the points like where you have a lot of gold, so there's a lot of flexible options that you can go for. None of them are going to matter all that much. You are really just looking for that Jax 3 and Lux 3. And finally, we have the AD Flex comp. So pretty much what this comp is, it's these 2 units plus any frontliner. And the best one is Poppy, but obviously any of these 4-cost ones are good. People will play the 3-cost ones for their synergies. Look out for that. The only thing that matters with these is that, like with Caitlyn, make sure you're playing Rapid Fire and 8-bit. And with Ezreal, make sure you're playing around Big Shot, MF, Jhin, doesn't matter. And then make sure you have an even Shroud on your tank, and make sure these units just have AD items. So, you know, IE, GS, once again, you'll notice red buff and blue buff are the 2 best items in the game. Caitlyn can't use red buff, but Ezreal best in slot is red buff and blue buff with IE. But you know, once again, like it doesn't matter which one of these you really play around. If you hit Caitlyn chosen, for example, and you have a blue buff, feel free to put blue buff on an Ezreal that you don't have chosen on, right? Even in Ezreal 1, eventually it'll be Ezreal 2. Otherwise, you know, playing around Kiana or all the other blue buff holders, Kiana, Akali, both you know, true damage Akali. You can go even Ahri in a pinch just for a bit is fine, just to hold your blue buff. Otherwise, it doesn't even matter. Depending on your items, you can also, you know, secondary or tertiary carry either Zed or Viego. Viego is definitely less desired. Zed is much better. So if you have like a random GA, you can throw it on Zed. And this comp is like super tough to play. Pretty much, I think it's a little bit too popular for how difficult it is to play. This comp generally requires a lot of things to go well. You are generally trying to play around Heartsteel for most of the game, because Heartsteel gives you a lot of resources that allow you to cap out higher than some of the other boards. Some of these, for example, real comps, you'll notice are actually capping sky high, and without the juice from Heartsteel, especially in the late game, you're going to find yourself falling behind. So if you don't have Heartsteel on stage 3, 4, and 5, you probably will not be winning with this comp, and oftentimes you'll even find yourself kind of like going towards the lower end of the placement, 6, 7, and 8. The other way to play it is going to be true damage spat. So if you have true damage spat, you just play around 6 true damage, you start putting all of them in. Echo, Akali, Kiana, you know, you literally just throw all these guys in. It doesn't matter. You just build your best board around 6 true damage. So obviously you have the spat, so you want to take out Yasuo if you can. Obviously before you have Kiana, you're gonna have to play the Yasuo, but it doesn't really matter. You want to play Sentinel just because it makes sense to. Generally, if you have Kennen, you want to, you know, play around Thresh. Blitzcrank makes less sense. This makes less sense. The best true damage user by far is Caitlyn, because obviously it pairs really well with Senna. So in that case, you'd be taking out Ezreal. Zed obviously doesn't need to be played, and this is like probably your quote-unquote standard board that you'll see. Yeah, this is only if you have true damage spat. It is by far the strongest spat in the game. game and probably the most broken thing in the game as well. But that being said, you will notice that even if you have true damage spat, a lot of people are going to be contesting these units that you want to look for. Echo especially is going to be really difficult to defend just in general, just because so many different comps play this unit. Even in this comp has a Sentinel, but like this comp I didn't feature a Sentinel. Generally the Sentinel people play will be Blitzcrank or Echo. You'll see Echo more often just because Echo's a 3 cost instead of a 4 cost. So same idea here. Trying to find Echo is going to be really tough, just because, like, as you notice, a lot of these top comps are playing Echo. But anyways, if you have the opportunity to build a true damage spat, make sure you are building that. A lot of people once again already know about this, but just in case you don't, you should definitely be looking out for that. I want to be talking about augments later and like how to play the patch kind of like as a whole. These are just the comps, but I will pull this notepad. You can read it if you want. Obviously I will be explaining some of these things. So these are like some of the ideas you should be thinking about when you're just playing TFT on this patch at all. So one of the most common strategies right now that people are employing at the highest levels of play is full open, and that's literally full selling your board from 2-1 onwards, and you literally do not play a single unit on stage 2 for the entire stage. So you literally lose every single round. You're just loss streaking, because the way they change player damage on stage 2 is that you're taking a lot less damage for doing this than you used to be. You still need a lot of gold in a lot of these comps, so pretty much you're amassing gold and trading HP to do it. Oftentimes you want to be kind of going for this if it looks like your board is going to be too weak. Otherwise, the other benefit to doing this is just because it's really good for item economy. Since the most broken thing in the game right now is a spatula, being able to find a spatula on stage 2 is super powerful. So oftentimes you'll see if spat go first pick on stage 2, it doesn't matter the unit, it doesn't matter the cost. Even on a 1 cost, people just yoink the spat and just hard force either true damage spat or just pretty much true damage spat. But like, some people will go for other things. Maybe they end up with the fawn, you never know. Otherwise, stuff like Ahri, if you see people doing this, it'll be because they really need that tier. So Ahri is more or less unplayable without blue buff. Shojin in a pinch kind of works, but you better hope that the rest of your board is really good, because if it's not, with Shojin Ahri, you're not really going to be doing better than our top 4 most of the time. Sometimes obviously situations will work out that you're going to do well. But another thing about this is that if someone else in the lobby is doing it, from like a theory of preserving HP, it's actually really beneficial for you to be doing the exact same thing. However, if someone else is doing it, it means that you cannot guarantee the 5 streak, because pretty much if you face that person, if neither player has a unit on their board, what ends up happening is that one of the players will lose, and it's a 50-50. It's straight up 50-50. You'll know what happens by traveling. I don't know if you've seen streamers talk about it, but if you travel to the enemy board, there's a little portal that shows up and your little legend will literally travel through it. If you travel through that portal, and there's no way of knowing it beforehand, by the way, so if you travel through that portal, you'll end up on the other person's board and you'll be the victor. So you'll lose your streak, you'll lose your loss streak, and the other person maintains it while only losing 1 HP. So if in your lobby 2 to 3, even 4 players are doing this, what will happen is that nobody's taking any damage, but nobody will, nobody can consistently maintain the streak other than by winning 50-50s. Obviously, there's still the chance that you avoid these players altogether, so in which case you'll just be taking the standard 3-0, 4-0, 5-0, depending on the number of units the enemy has, but you will still be getting a lot more gold for that. So just be a little bit wary about that. Otherwise, because this is such a popular strategy, especially at the highest level of play, you'll notice that people with really strong Chosens are going to be opting to win streak. So these are the most obvious ones: Corki with items and Cassante with items. Both of them are really strong. Cassante with items means like pretty much tank items. The best one being Even Shroud, because then that allows you to set up like Heartsteel stage 2 and 3, and then pushing forward, like you'll be able to maintain Heartsteel on stage 4, maybe even stage 5, depending on like how much AP you have. Cassante is the best one, and then also you'll be able to slam stuff like Even Shroud, play around AD flex. Otherwise, you can see people just like win streak with it, and then maybe they have like somehow get a blue buff, or they get a Gunblade, they'll just like put that on backliner and try to like play Ahri around that. This is really strong. Corki is just like the best backliner chosen in the early game. Actually no, the best one is Jinx, but I think Jinx has like a little bit tougher itemization, because like her best item is going to be stuff like Rageblade, but you really don't want to be building Rageblade right now. I don't know if you noticed, but pretty much none of these comps use Rageblade. The only one you'll see is Seraphine. This doesn't count just because you're putting it on Sona, but obviously playing around a 5 cost in the early game is not going to be something that you really want to be doing if you want to be playing with for consistency, right? So Jinx with items. Otherwise, like IE is still good, stuff like that. Any random AD items, Hurricane. Sometimes people generally like to save Hurricane because bow is a valuable component. Red buff, once again, is the best item in the game, so you want to be looking out for that. A lot of units in the game literally just use blue and red. There's purple Twitch, because you just put blue and red Twitch. There's there's purple Ezreal. We talked about that earlier as well. So yeah, these are the 2 best items in the game. Build them. And then finally, the last thing you can be doing on stage 2, assuming like it's like standard, is Heartsteel, because otherwise you'll probably be like win, lose, win, or win, lose, stuff like that. You're just at the mercy of like how strong you are versus how strong the enemy is. Obviously, there's a lot of matchmaking RNG involved there. So the most consistent ones are going to be if you can manage one of these 2. That being said, if you get Heartsteel, just play Heartsteel. Like, it's no brainer. You pretty much play it the entire game. You're just getting resources the entire game. 5 Heartsteel is broken, 7 Heartsteel is broken, and 10 Heartsteel is ridiculous, but also broken. Completely unachievable, but yeah, don't play for that. Probably not worth talking about. So this is probably one of the most important parts of the video. Maybe I will even edit this to the front of the video. I'm not sure yet, but anyways, this is like how you should be picking your augments pretty much no matter the comp you play. So pretty much it's like on 2-1 you want to if you're opening, you want to take an econ augment because that scales your econ like a lot faster. So if you get richer, you're getting to 70 a lot quicker. Obviously, you don't need to greed above 70, but like you are getting like the maximum econ thresholds a lot earlier. Clear Mind, once again, you just full open for it and you're getting 3 gold a turn. So that's really strong. Patient Study, same idea. You're getting 3 gold a turn and then you fast 8. You obviously can't play around a reroll of Patient Study. It's a lot weaker because you want to be pushing those levels. It's giving you gold in the form of EXP, same with Clear Mind. Yeah, just take a random econ opener for open, but otherwise like econ openers are still pretty good, like 3's a crowd, all that fun stuff. Sometimes you can get like hard steal off 3's a crowd, stuff like that. Next is items for tempo win streak. So pretty much the strongest tempo augments in the early game are going to be ones that give you items. And there's like certain items that are really strong and certain item augments that are not as strong. The ones that are really strong are going to be ones that like slam an Ornn item. You'll see stuff like Sleight of Hand giving a TG is one of the best early games items in the game, as well with some scaling. You'll see Portable Forge is notorious for being a really strong early game augment, as well as giving you direction in the form of if you get like Collector, maybe you can play around like an AD carry, right? Or if you get Zhonya's, you can play around Jax, stuff like that. If you get Death Stance, you can play around like Yone, Riven. That's going to be a replacement for your BT. So you want to be taking item augments. Yeah, that's going to be for tempo. And then obviously there's going to be like the weaker item augments, which is going to be like item augments that kind of like improve your item economy. So this will be like Pandora's. This will be like Component Buffet, Iron Asset, which it gives you an item that helps you manage your item economy, but it's not going to be as strong because you don't necessarily get to slam the item that you want at that point in the game every single time, right? Or like it doesn't give you like a full item, it just gives you half an item, which is going to be a lot weaker than something that obviously gives you a full item. That being said, it will give you more choices at that point in the game as well as later in the game, so it's a little bit greedier and it helps you manage your item economy. Next on 3-2, pretty much you're going to be going with one of these 3 options. You take a greedy combat augment for scaling, because if you're healthy, so if you're like 100 HP, you can start sacking some of your HP. Most of the time you won't be able to streak past 3-2 because that's when people who open are going to start rolling, right? So you're going to see people who are playing Jax with like a Jax 2 with items and they're going to start beating you, and that's okay, right? So that's why we take like one of these scaling augments. These are augments that can be really strong later in the game, probably weaker at the moment, especially something like Little Buddies, which is one of the stronger augments in the game but generally provides no value in the mid game. You take a non-greedy combat augment if you're in a decent position. These are, you know, once again, most of these are just broken, so you could feel free to take these no matter your position. And then finally you take Juice if you're in a bad position, and Juice means like sometimes it's like a kind of like an econ augment but like also gives you like some power. So teaming up is like the best one. It gives you a support item but it also gives you 2-4 costs, which can turn into money if you don't use them, as well as turning into board power if you do use them. So like this is a really strong augment in these positions. A lot of item augments that like give you tempo now, Capricious Forge, Big Grab Bag, Sleight of Hand, these are augments that give you power immediately as you take them, whereas like a lot of these combat augments you'll notice are only giving you strength later. Bulk and Crash Tests are kind of like the exception to this. They give you a lot of power right now as well as giving you a little bit of power later. So these are just really good 3-2 augments. And then finally on 4-2, you pretty much just take the greediest combat augments you can take. So there's no real like tier list about them. Like it's really going to be difficult for me to tell you exactly like which one to take, but you know, once again, if you just follow these ones, they're all really good on 4-2 pretty much no matter the comp you play. And you'll notice that a lot of people will take kind of like econ augments or like you know, juice augments, like item augments for these comps, these reroll comps, and that's actually like something that you definitely should not be doing. So these reroll comps will pretty much only win out if you have combat stacked on top of how strong they are. So if you think about it, like these comps are really reliant on what is essentially one carry doing like 90% of the team's damage, right? So in this case obviously it's Riven, in this case obviously it's Yone, in this case it's like less so just because like the condition to playing this is already combat, but like this game it's like Jax. Pretty much 1 or 2 carries are doing all the work, and for 1 of the 2 carries to be, you know, stretched even further because your carry will be stronger than the enemy carry as a result of having a 3-star, you want to be like stacking combat augments on top of them. So like for the most part melee units are really going to be taking advantage of like stuff like Harm Assist, stuff like Jewel Lotus. Obviously you don't take Little Buddies for reroll, that goes without saying. You know, Combat Caster, these are really strong augments for these reroll comps that like stack 1 carry and just like blow through the enemy team. So like if you take like the duplicator augments that allow you to hit your 3-star faster but don't offer any value late game, yes, you might have your 3-star, but you will get outscaled by people who took combat augments and then also have their 3-star. Obviously in some cases you will have to take an econ augment or else you won't be able to hit your 3-star and then you'll die anyway, but just look out for that. Like you have to be a little bit greedy with your combat augments, especially on 4-2 as the game progresses later. And yeah, that's pretty much how I play the patch. As you can see, I'm climbing infinite, or I mean, I have to sit a little bit for the snapshots just for today. I'll be back playing tomorrow. So yeah, I mean, hopefully you guys liked the video. If you did, please leave a like, a subscribe would be nice as well. If you have any recommendations for what I should be making in the future, I know I haven't posted in a while, but just feel free to leave them down in the description below. Otherwise, you can follow me on Twitch at guubums. You can follow me on Twitter also at guubums. That'd be greatly appreciated. And until next time, hopefully it won't come January 1st of 2025. Yeah, I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.